I'm Spook Span.
And I'm Brian Stevens.
Welcome to the 11th Commandment,
a podcast about how chasing big whitetails has become a religion to us. The plan is to get into the head of one of the most successful whitetail hunters on the planet
and to share over 40 plus years of hunting experience with you. Big bucks, life, and America. Here we go.
Welcome to the 11th Commandment, brought to you by Spook Nation. I'm Brian Stevens here with Spook Span, one of the most successful whitetail hunters on the planet. How you doing today, Spook?
Doing great. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Me too. It's getting cold. What's the temperature in Tennessee?
Man, I think it was like 8 or 9 this morning. The high today's in the 20s, that's cold for here. Yeah.
Yeah. It's freezing here in Florida. I mean, we got down to 70 degrees. Just kidding.
Oh, my God.
No, it got down in the 40s. It got down in the 40s. It was actually kind of chilly here for anywhere. Yeah. But it's nothing like what you got there in Tennessee in the Midwest.
Yeah.
So, look, I want to do something different today.
Yeah,
my friend, and I want to take a little bit different approach, and I want to get in the mind of Spook Span, and I want to talk about.
It's not hard.
Well, wait till we get in there. Everybody might be, this might only last 10, 15
Pretty
minutes.
Simple-minded.
I want you to think about one or two deer, and these are bucks that you hunted over an extended period of time. These are deer that you had to strategize, you had to hunt, maybe leave after, 5-10 days, drive 10 hours back a week later and hunt them for another extended period of time. And I want to just, get in your head around, how do you stay focused? How do you not get lazy? How do you not cut corners? Because again, you're hunting a mature animal that's going to pick up on anything that you do and dropping the ball and not staying focused. So let's jump into, that first buck that you can maybe think of and tell a little bit of history about it. And then, walk through that mindset of hunting that deer.
Well, I think one of my favorite bucks that I feel like that I put a lot of thought into it and really kind of figured him out was the buck that I call T-Rex. And T-Rex is probably one of the best known bucks that we killed over the years. It was in Oklahoma. And we knew about T-Rex the year before, actually. So me and Ryan Siders and another friend of mine, Mark Hatcher, had a lease in Oklahoma. And this buck was there the year before. I think Mark had named him T-Rex. And he was a typical 6x6, had these cool bladed brow tines that curved in, but just straight typical, probably in the 180, super nice buck. And we had a friend that actually let him get away on camera one day. And I had a buddy there, a game warden buddy, that helped us manage the farm and had helped us run trail cameras. Really good guy. Spencer Grace is his name, and just one game warden of the year 1 year in the United States. Just a great guy, great person, and just does a great job at his job. But he helped us on the farm, and that deer, I was glad that deer made it, and I didn't hunt that deer the year before, just because I was hoping that he would make it one more year.
Yeah.
But the next year, he grew 3 big drops.
Woo!
And just he was his shape of his rack was the same. Those big bladed brow tines. He got more gnarly on his bases with some,
love it. Yeah,
some junk, and just got some more mass on his bases. And on this big property, on one side of the road we had public hunting, and on the other side of the road, on another side of the farm, it was actually the state line. And the neighbors had pictures of him, and Spencer had seen the deer in the summer in the beans on the public hunting. There was a lot of people that knew about him.
Yep.
A lot of people that
deer
was
like that, of course.
Yeah. And so started hunting this deer, early in the season, and of course, it's always difficult when it's warm, and you still got your hopes up. But as the season progressed and we got into October and then into November, made a few trips. You catch a front moving through, thinking that, but it still wasn't ideal.
Yeah.
And then when the moon was right in October, it was hot in the 80s, almost 90. So we just, things just weren't coming together. And as hard as it was, I was kind of avoiding hunting him. We would get an occasional picture of him, like 10 minutes before dark, but nothing that got you nothing that really excited me enough to, to drive up there more than a couple of times. And it
Yeah.
was about a 10-hour drive. And, but as we got into November, we started noticing a tendency that when a cold front did come through, he was showing up earlier in the afternoons and sometimes in the morning,
Okay.
especially when the rut started. One of the things that we set up this particular spot where there's a ridge with a bench on it, and then 2 points that come off down to hollow, and so there was kind of like just a natural crossing, and there was rubs and scrapes in there, and we'd had pictures of him right there a lot, and we had a double hung hunter cameraman set there, but it was really only good for a south wind. Well, the problem with that is that the only daylight pictures we were getting of him was when the front would come through and it'd be a north wind.
Yeah.
And we tried. The problem with hunting down low in a valley or hollow or a place like that is wind swirls. It's even worse. And I was just not liking the setup at all. And so I talked to Spencer one day, and Spencer lived in the area and had experience there. And so here's another interesting thing. So another really crazy thing is we got this 10,000 acre cattle ranch that we have leased, and this deer is most of the pictures and the sightings was all within like 200 acre corner behind the farmhouse where we stayed while we were there hunting.
Interesting.
So there was a barn lot, and where they used to have cattle or used to hold cows, and they had hay stored, and there were cattle all over the farm. And I told Spencer, I said, I think T-Rex knows when we're here. He hears us out the house. He hears the trucks. He hears the door slams. He said, absolutely. I said, well, that's part of the problem. And I said, also, we had been getting in the truck and driving around kind of in a loop and coming back into him from another direction. And I think he was there was a real thick, rocky side hill there. And I think that I think he had us figured out, know.
Okay.
And so I was like, I'm changing everything. So so I hunted him the week before Thanksgiving. It was warm. It was a terrible week to hunt, but they were calling for a cold front to move through on Thanksgiving night. And so my strategy was to go in there and put up a ground blind on the Wednesday in the middle of the day before Thanksgiving. And then I was going to drive home for Thanksgiving and surprise the family, because normally back then, most of the time I was off hunting somewhere.
Yeah.
And it was that way when I was growing up. Me and my dad,
Yep.
we hunted on Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
And so it was kind of nothing that was really new to me or even Marty, was the fact that most of the time I was going to be gone. So I surprised her, and I didn't even tell her till it was probably about midnight, and we were just talking, and she said, well, I'm going to go to bed. And I said, you're not going to wait up for me? And she's like, what are you talking about? You on your way home? I said, yeah, I'm coming home for Thanksgiving. So she was really excited about that. And, but when I put this ground blind in, man, I just went to the extreme to camo it in. I mean,
Yep.
I piled logs up. I took and cut a oak tree that was probably 3 inches in diameter, and I stuck it up in front of the blind and tied it to the blind so that the limbs, and then I trimmed the limbs so the limbs would hang off the top of the blind and then out in front of it like a canopy,
Yeah.
so it gave
Yep.
it a 3D effect. Kind of like what I was talking, one of
Yep.
the other episodes about doing with the cedars. And then I took and just I put, covered it up real good with oak and maple and beech limbs and a few cedars, and then took leaves and just piled. And man, it looks so good. It was the best camo job I've ever done on a blind. And then I took a rake and some snips, and I raked out a path all the way to the house.
Yep.
And cut all the twigs. And so, there was our plan. Came home for Thanksgiving and had Thanksgiving dinner. I picked JD up on the interstate on the way back, and we drove. Got in that night at like 2 a.m. And I told JD, I said, when we get there, I said, we're going to park on the back side of the barn. We're going to carry our gear into the house. Don't turn the light on. No talking. Don't let the storm door slam. Nothing. No sound. So we did. Same thing. We got up at like 4:30. Only got a couple hours of sleep. And then same thing. Snuck out quietly. Snuck into the blind. Well, another thing too that was really awesome is on the way back driving as we came into Oklahoma, we hit the rain in the front. So the temperature was
You knew it was
85.
happening.
What's that?
You knew it
Oh,
was
yeah.
happening.
Yeah. It's just, you're just like, oh my gosh, it's just setting up. That's when I had the feeling, all the planning and discussion and work and driving and all the things that we had done. I thought this is it. This is when it's coming together. And so we drove through. It rained about an inch. And the next morning, instead of it being 70 the next morning, it was 22.
Woo.
Yeah, and the wind out of the north, just light 10 miles an hour. And it was just crisp and clear and quiet. And, it was just, perfect. We got in the blind, we're being super quick. And at that time, JD had just started working for me. And he's so funny. He's been from Tennessee, and JD had never seen a deer over 140 at that time. I told JD that morning, I said, we're going to kill him today or tomorrow.
Yep.
He's like, you think so? You think so? What makes you think that? I said, because every time we've gotten a daylight picture of him since the last week of October has been after one of these fronts have gone through, and it just hadn't worked out because we had went to Saskatchewan. We'd had a trip planned to Saskatchewan with the Eskers earlier in the month, and so we missed a couple of key weeks that I would have loved to have been hunting. And sure enough, when we landed in Saskatchewan, I had a message from Spencer, and he sent me 3 pictures. T-Rex had been in 3 times the day before, and he came in 3 times that day. And I was just like,
you're sick.
I was dying,
Yeah.
And, but anyways, so the sun got up, got some, the woods got good light, man. It just still had that feeling. And, JD told me, he said, hey, I want to do a cutaway. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was really sleepy. I'd been up, everything we'd done by this time sun's coming up and I'm starting to get a little tired, So I said, okay, and so we did a little cutaway and kind of built up the story a little bit. So I said, I'm going to lay my head back on the back of the blind and just close my eyes for a minute. My eyes are tired, and I laid my head back, and my head, I promise you didn't hit 2 seconds. He said, I hear something. So he still was filming and had his earbuds in so he could hear really good, and I eased up and looked, and I said, yeah, here comes a doe. And I could tell she had her tail stuck out and she was acting kind of funny. And all of a sudden I looked up on the side of the hill and oh my goodness, I saw him, and he was coming down a rocky hill that was up the side holler from us. And every time he'd take a step down the hill, those drop tines are just going up and down just like this, I was just like, oh my gosh, here he comes, And it was just, sure enough, he came in, excuse me, and, uh, you know, put an arrow through him. I actually hit him a little high, hit him in the backbone. He dropped. I had to get out and shoot him again. But it was just, a lot of planning, a lot of trips, a lot of strategy. And I just really felt like we did a really good job of changing the strategy.
Yep.
And just going for it because the wind was wrong that morning. I mean, it was a north wind. It was blowing straight towards her. And we had the ozonics going. And that was probably the first real super defining moment for me in ozonics.
Yeah.
Was that hunt because the wind couldn't have been any more wrong. She got up there in front of us at like less than 20 yards, and there was a little 6-pointer that was aggravating them, and T-Rex was kind of keeping him pushed back and aggravating. And I think I would have loved to have milked the footage for another, 15 to 30 seconds, but that 6-pointer was being so just nagging T-Rex to the point I was like, he's going to run at him, run him off. The next thing you know, he's going to be going up the hillside away from us, and we're not going to get a shot. So I was like, can't wait any longer once he got into a good spot to get a shot. But, I just felt like, that wasn't a hunt. I mean, it killed him the day after Thanksgiving, so it didn't drag into December or even January like it could have or like it might have. I had actually said I was going to dedicate the whole season to T-Rex, trying to make it happen, And but I felt like, to your point and kind of what you want to talk about, I just feel like that, staying focused, continually to think what you can do to make things better. And I mean, hey, you talk about motivation. When you get a trail camera picture of a 221 with 3 drops, I mean, it's not hard to stay motivated and keep yourself excited about it when you're after a buck like that. So, I mean, I think when it's the hardest to be motivated and excited is when you don't have a picture of anything like that, and you don't feel like you're really, you're going to go hunting with not much expectation that you're actually going to see something that you think's worthy of a tag, and
well, in that situation, and I think a lot of us have been there. And look, there's no question that was a special deer, but I think it's, when you think about the grind, if you will, and you got a lot of hunters who they've got pictures, they're in an area that they know there's potential. They've seen bucks in the past. And, it's the hunters that stay disciplined, that they don't cut corners. They're still paying attention to getting in, getting out, the wind, and even not hunting when the wind is right. If multiple conditions are wrong,
Correct.
and it's they're hunting, all phases of the season, and it might not be to the last part, and they shoot a deer. And those are the ones that I, not to take anything away. I've shot early season deer and it happened quick and love it, big deer. But those seem to be really rewarding when you got to grind it, and you may not know there's a deer, but the potential of a big deer there or mature deer.
Yeah, and I think that's what was so gratifying about T-Rex is that we just, we continued to keep the path, to stay focused on what we needed to do, not being content with the previous setup, trying to think of ways to make it better, give us a better opportunity. And I think that's all, part of it. And then just staying positive. I mean, you can ask anybody, well, because we've hunted together. I mean, every day I feel like I'm today's the day I'm going to kill a big one. And every minute I'm sitting there in the stand, I'm thinking it's just, any
Yep.
minute one's fixing to step out. And not many people have that belief. It's like
Yep.
when I'm playing basketball, I never seen a shot I didn't like. I think every one of them going in, you know.
Well, think about why that's important too, Spook.
Yeah.
Because and look, I've been on both sides of that. You get a little down, or you get not as focused. You
Hmm.
let your guard down, and sometimes it's those seconds of that opportunity. And if you're not paying attention and you're not focused, then he may show and be gone in that moment of time, and you're sitting there
Oh,
heartbroken.
exactly. Exactly. I mean, you know, it's like if you got to go out behind the lodge or if you got to, if you got to take a dump, you need to carry your gun with you because, especially during the
Yep,
rut, because he's just as liable to come by you then as not. And so
absolutely.
I know that sounds funny and silly, but I mean, it's happened, and even I know we're not going to talk about him today, but even on the Kansas deer, I was just going to scout and hang a stand that day, and I almost didn't take my bow with me.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
So, and it turned
yep,
out to be the greatest hunt of my life. So,
absolutely.
it's you just being prepared, I've been on some hunts, even, you know, I tell you, been on some mule deer hunts where it was like that, man. You're just every day, day after day, and a lot of times you can be on a big area of public hunting or whatever, and you're actually doing a lot of driving and spotting. And man, things can happen so quick, and you just got to be mentally prepared to go from 0 to 1,000 at the snap of a finger, and
Yep.
just be attentive and not get caught, twiddling your thumbs and looking at your phone and looking down, which is probably, nowadays can be one of the most distracting things we have as far as a hunter is our phones, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you think it can definitely kill time, and it can help time pass, but
Hmm.
to your point, you have the opportunity to lose that moment. And I'm like, yeah, I
Yeah.
spent probably 5 6 years out in Tucson mule deer hunting and covering a lot of ground. The same thing, a lot of
Hmm.
spots, driving, spot and stalk,
Yeah.
and it can happen instantly. And you got to be on your game. And if you're again farting around on your phone, you know you might lose that, and it's
Yeah.
hard,
Yeah.
but it's true.
Yeah. Yeah, and listen, I get it. I mean, because when you get just long days in the stand and day after day, it is a good way to. It's better to be in the stand and a little distracted than not to be on the
This
stand.
is a good point. That's fair.
Yeah,
That's fair.
yeah, and it's I think you have to think, well, I've got to get up there in the stand at 1 o'clock so that I don't mess anything up. But more than likely, I'm not going to see anything until 4 o'clock. Then you've got some time to kill, and of course, most of the time or rarely ever do I ever have. If I am looking at my phone for some reason, I don't have my sound on, so I can still hear, even though I don't hear that well anymore. Uh, but that's one of the good things about having a cameraman with good ears is they can hear deer coming before I
No, no
can.
question, no question about it. I think the other thing too is um, making sure that you are feeding your body. And you and I are, we're avid fitness guys. It's part of who we are. It's a lifestyle, and it has been our whole lives. But when you
Yeah,
prepare and have food, and you can have things that keep you hydrated,
yeah,
mentally, that's going to help you too. And the right kind of foods are going to be really imperative. Again, for those extended long period hunts, you're cold and you got to stay focused. So I
yeah,
know that's something you believe in, something I believe in, and I
for
think
sure.
is sometimes overlooked.
Yeah, I got out for the most part. I've got out of eating junk food a long time ago, and I'm really fortunate. Marty's come up with these protein cookies, which is a mixture of peanut butter, oatmeal. It's got dates in it. It's got protein in it. And it's several other things. I can't remember everything that's in it. And so I put them in a little plastic baggie, and I usually never leave without a couple for a set
Yep.
in the stand. And then if I'm going to sit all day, I'm going to make me a couple of, turkey sandwiches or, something like that. Maybe have some good deer jerky to snack on. I'm always going to have one or two protein drinks and one or two bottles of water. And, I just think, and it also helps you pass the time. I mean, but just keeping your body, I think it's part of just keeping your body alert, healthy, and then
Yep.
keeping yourself prepared physically for having to be there 10 days in a row,
Yeah.
And, granted, very seldom do you ever hit it 10 days in a row because of the weather and the moon.
Yeah.
Very seldom are you going to get 10 really good days in a row. But during the rut, most of the time you're going to go from around October 28th to about December the 7th. You're going to be hunting a lot.
Yeah.
So just staying healthy, staying hydrated, and I think just part of the helps keep you mentally sharp.
Yep. Nope. Absolutely. Well, let's think about it. You got another deer that, maybe a similar scenario that you hunted for, a couple years or an extended period of time. You had to break up throughout the season.
Yeah, so we did. There's another really big deer that we killed in Ohio that and I've gone blank on. I hate this when I do this. I've gone blank on what we named him. But anyways, may have been Thor. I think it was Thor. So this deer disappeared. We had gotten a trail camera picture of him early in the year. Late in the year before, and then we kind of had an idea of where we thought he was using, and we set up there. We did see him a time or two, but we weren't getting many pictures of him, and it was just it just seemed like things weren't coming together like I wanted to.
Okay.
Excuse me, on him, and I was kind of I was somewhat discouraged. I mean, I wasn't putting a lot of hope in the fact that we were even going to get an opportunity at Thor, that he was even using or staying there enough that we were going to get a shot at him or
Okay.
even get to hunt him. I didn't even feel like we were actually really even hunting him at times. He was showing up so little, And then after the rut, he started showing up, showed up like 3 times in a 7-day period. Well, that was the most that we had seen him. And the fact that it was post rut and we felt like he was eating on our food source, then that was like, okay, we might be hitting on something now.
So
And
you think it
so,
was the food source, Spook, that was changing his pattern, or what do you think was causing him to change his pattern after the rut?
I think that we were actually kind of in his home area and didn't even realize it.
Okay.
Because I say home area. I mean, some deer for whatever reason have, you talk. I hear this story all the time. Man, we had this deer all summer, and when it got close to the rut or hunting season, he just disappeared. And we didn't see him anymore until such and such a time. And then you have other guys I have said, man, we never see any deer until it gets close to the rut. And so then all of a sudden, we just have bucks we've never seen before show up, or we hadn't had a picture of him since last November. And then boom, November 2nd, we get a picture of him. So you hear those two sides of that scenario a lot. And I think this buck was a buck that spent most of his time on one of the neighbors during the rut. And then after it was over, he came back into a place where I think he was more comfortable with actually living. And then we had provided him with a food source. And so
Yep.
And
Okay.
then it was just a matter of just staying with the plans, watching the weather, watching the trail camera. And, of course, I'm always love when these cold fronts come through like this one we're having here now. And, maybe it's been 30s and 50s, and then it goes from single digits or teens to highs in 20s or 30s. And that's when you're like, this is going to be,
Yeah.
this is going to be the time. And I mean, the moon still has some effect, but I think really it's more about the weather. You get cold weather, you're gonna, I feel like if you don't overhunt it and you don't, you know, you pay attention to how you're getting in, how you're getting, especially getting out, because most of the time you're just after hunting in the afternoons when you're hunting feed patterns. So
Yeah.
really,
Spook, I want to just real quick there. I
yeah,
think you hit on something there that I know I made mistakes early on, and that is you got weather, you got moon, but it's the human pressure. And I think, I so often didn't pay attention to that, whether it was other hunters or just myself.
mm-hmm.
And, you think you got to be in the woods, you got to be in the woods.
Yeah,
And obviously you do. But that human pressure, whether it's on your place or it's somewhere else, and they come to a place. And I think a mature deer, what I have observed, even if the moon's not perfect, even if the weather's not perfect, but it's got to be obviously in a certain way. But if there's not a lot of human pressure, you're going to see a deer daylight more often than not, based on my experiences.
oh yeah. There's nothing that I don't think there's anything that can dictate your daylight sightings more than them. They've got to feel comfortable with
Yep.
coming in the daylight, and the more they get hunted or just the more human activity that they see, hear, smell, or sense, the less likely. And especially if it's in a patternable time, if they're continually hearing or smelling or sensing something at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and again at 6:30,
Yep.
or if you're getting down, if you're hunting every day and you're getting down out of your stand when it gets dark at, whatever it is, 5:36, 6:30, and uh, you climb down out of your stand, you're not really paying a lot of attention to noise. You hit the edge of the stand, you're banging your bow on something, you're stepping on limbs, and you're shining your flashlight all around, and all the different things that you can do. um, I think if they're staged up 100 yards from the food source, whether it's whatever it is, beans, corn, alfalfa, or whatever, whatever food source it is, and they see all that, well, they're not going, they may not even, they may stop coming completely,
Yeah.
you know. And so you just have to be very strategic and conscious of those different things. And then odds are, if I'm not getting many pictures of this deer and he's kind of, I feel like I'm playing a cat and mouse game, then I think you need to hedge your bets on good weather afternoons and good moon afternoons. And if it's the moon's not right and it's warm and windy or the wind's wrong or whatever, just take a break or
Yeah.
go somewhere. If you just feel like you got to be in the woods, and I get it because I've been that person before, then just go to another spot where you're not necessarily, you don't think you're, you don't really think there's anything there that you may not want to shoot, but you never know what can happen.
Yep.
Or go somewhere
Yep.
and shoot a doe for the freezer,
Yep.
or whatever, or just go scout from the truck. Maybe go ride around and see what you can see. You know, especially if you're not seeing the deer that you're after. See if you drive around in a 5 or 6 or 7 mile circle area and see if you can find him.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Use that time, and see what you can learn about the area. You never know. You may see a neighbor out. I mean, I know two or three people this has happened to be out riding around in their area, and there's somebody's hit hit a farmer's mailbox and he's out there putting it up, and you stop to help him put it up. And you know what? Next thing you know, you got a new place to hunt.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know, and there's you know, a million things. It could be somebody stuck on the side of the road. Maybe you recognize their truck, or you help them out, or a million things it could be. You see somebody getting ready to feed their cows. You just stop and, you know, use that time to
Yep.
visit with them, introduce yourself, help them feed, and then you never know when that's going to come back to you. So you use that time. You know, you might think that you've wasted an afternoon, but you haven't. I see it as an opportunity, not a
Hmm.
and you know, if something that's not going to happen every time you go out,
No, I
but
understand.
if it happens 1 out of 20 times when you're out, then you know
Yep.
it could
Yep.
work out for you.
Yep. Okay. So get back to get back to Thor.
Hmm. Yeah. So you know, we're getting down to the like, you know, and we're in January.
Okay.
You know, we're getting you know, 2 to 3 pictures of him in the dark. But then all of a sudden, the afternoon prime feed time is getting closer to a daylight time, and it's going from a 2 or 3 deer day up to a 5 or 6 deer day, and the moon's getting closer to being, you know, what it
Yeah.
needs to be. And he hits, you know, like one afternoon, I can't remember the exact date in January. He hits it like right. I mean, you know, would have been borderline whether you could have shot him legally or not. So, so the moon time is going to be better the next day, and the weather's going to be the same. It's going to be cold. So we're
Okay.
like,
That's good.
we're going to kill him tomorrow. Yeah, we're going to
Yeah.
kill him tomorrow. And and sure enough, you know, you go in there. There's a lot of excitement. You know, everything's cool, awesome. The weather's awesome. The moon phase is awesome. And you look up at 4:36, and oh my gosh, here he comes. You know,
Yep.
and it's just I just get so happy when I see, and I think, you know, I'm thinking about the strategy and the chase and all the thought that went into it. And I'm like, you know, this is it.
Yep.
You know, we exactly what we prepared for and thought and, you know, focused and strategized on. It's the
Hmm.
culmination of all that is getting ready to come down to a 10-second encounter, you know.
Yep.
And so I just get happy. I don't really usually get nervous until after I pull the trigger.
Okay.
When I hit that, I generally don't even remember pulling the trigger on the release or whatever it is I'm shooting. It's usually just, you know, once I see that moment of opportunity when I think it's a good time to draw and shoot, it just kind of go into a different mode. Then once I see that arrow go through him, see him, you know, do that certain
Yep.
hop that they do, buck up, you know, then I start getting nervous and shaky, and I get excited then, you know. But and you know, you do all this work and you do all this strategy for 12 months, and it comes down to most of the time, you know, 1 or 2 10, you know, 5 to 15 second encounters. And so, you know, that's just a lot of things that had to come together to make that happen. And that's why it's so rewarding. I mean, that's,
Well, it is, buddy, and you know, it's rewarding, and it's doing all the things that you can do within your control
yeah,
to put yourself in that position.
yeah,
And I think, you know, people ask, you know, why do you love bow hunting, or why do you love hunting so much? And, you know, the scenarios you described, you know, could be duplicated, you know, for so many hunters.
yeah,
And I just love hearing stories and respect, you know, those times when, you know, you'd have that moment and it all comes together. And there's times too, and I don't, you said you kind of go a little bit in a zone, but there's that whole part of it we haven't talked to, but it's about practicing and being prepared to kill that animal when you've got that moment. And look, I'll be the first to say that I have screwed up some situations and I've learned from it. It's not a lack of practicing. It's just when I was in that moment. And I'll tell you, there was, one of the first years we're doing the Chronicles, I missed a 220 drop time velvet mule deer and on
Yeah,
the
I
side of a
remember you
mountain
telling me about that. Yeah.
and El Wapo. And we had with the cameraman and we had some stuff going on and it just kind of went from bad to worse. But what I failed to do was aim low on a deer that was straight down from me, aim lower than what I should have.
Yeah.
And I literally watched the arrow at 60 yards just go right over his back.
Yeah.
And, and it was just, I'll never forget that. But it's, again, in that moment, going through a process, thinking about whether the animal straight up, straight down,
Yeah.
different things. And I think you owe it to yourself to also, talk to other people, talk to other hunters, and be prepared for different scenarios.
Yeah.
So that way, you don't blow a deer of a lifetime, and
Well, that's
that still
exactly
haunts me.
right. And a lot of it just comes from, like you said, experience. But even that, it's just in today's, well, anytime, but especially in today's world when you got business and family and kids and I know you're like me, your kids played sports and you got so many things, whether it's a TV show or the cameraman or
Yeah.
there's so many things that can get on our minds and distract us. And then all of a sudden, here we are with this opportunity. And I have a checklist of things when I start seeing the opportunity approaching. I got a checklist in my mind of things I'm going to. Look at my cams, look at my release, look at my arrow, look at my knock, look at my broadhead. Make sure I didn't get a stick in the rest or something while I was pulling my bow up, or just
Yep.
all the different things, checklists you try to go through, and then you try to remind yourself if if you got a really sharp angle shot, or when you draw, is the deer's head up and alert, or is he feeding? Has a how far is he? Has do I hold a little low if I'm afraid he's going to try to duck the arrow? All these things has to process in a matter of just a few seconds. And a lot of times nothing can prepare you for that except time in the field and experience and opportunities and mistakes,
Yeah.
and it didn't matter whether you're a ball player or a hunter or a businessman. Most of the time, one of the biggest, most important things you can do in your life and your hunting career is just learn from your mistakes and say, well, I'll
Mm-hmm.
never let that happen again.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know and
Yep.
so yes, that's absolutely right. And of course you would rather it happen on a you'd rather it happen on a 170 mule deer or 180 mule deer rather
Yeah.
than a 220 drop time mule deer.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. That was, that will probably be that once in a lifetime. Maybe not.
yeah,
But
I
listen,
mean, I've had some, and things happen unexpectedly. I mean,
yeah.
I hunted a big deer one year in Kentucky, and the deer, so he comes straight in. It's cold. So on that day, it's like literally 5 degrees.
Yeah.
And I got on, quite a few clothes, and I'm shooting that Oldman Pro from PSC at the time, and
Know it well.
was kind of hard to shoot, in
Yeah.
itself.
Fast,
It's super fast, and
but it's hard to shoot.
that's the bow I killed that mule deer in Utah 203 at 103 yards, and but and it you couldn't ask for a piece of equipment to have performed any better. But on a cold day, deer walks right up and it's standing behind an oak tree for like 10 minutes, and all I can see is his rack out both sides. I can't see the deer at all, and
Yeah.
he's right there. I mean, super easy shot, 10 yards.
Sure.
And then of all the things that I would never have expected him to do, I mean, it's 45 minutes before dark, but it's cloudy and overcast, and
Yeah.
Actually, there was snow on the ground, super cold. It was just it was super, super, deer were hungry. Uh, the thing that I least would have predicted that he would have done, he walks out around the tree, and I had been normally I wouldn't have done this, but it was just a combination. It was the perfect storm. I'm cold. I'm looking down like this. He comes out from around the tree and stops, is coming towards me.
Oh.
And instead of, normally if I saw a deer was getting ready to walk under me, I would draw and then come down.
Yep.
Well, I tried to do this.
Yep.
Dude, I couldn't get my bow back. Couldn't get it back. I strained. I was like, are you kidding me? I pulled this bow back a gazillion times.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't get it back. Well, he walks up to my tree, and I let back off because then he's like right under the stand. I mean, I could have spit in between his eyeballs.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, well, he's going to walk behind me.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to draw and shoot him from down between his shoulder. I'm going to pull about middle of him, try to either hit him in the backbone or go right down between, into the boiler room from the like middle of the back. Well, he gets right up to the tree and he goes, looks straight up at me. This deer was
No, he didn't.
220-ish.
Oh.
And so but you know what? I'm just froze. I'm just looking down like between the stand, and he knew something wasn't right, but he wasn't really tore up. And he bounds out there, about 40 yards, and it's too, too many limbs, too much stuff, and I don't get a shot at him. And I am just sick, about just, so if you couldn't hardly have scripted everything to go as wrong as as it could have went circumstantially for that deer, anything else he could have done would have been easy, chip shot.
Yeah.
Except for
what
him coming straight in.
Yeah.
So,
Spook, am I a bad friend that you just made me feel better about myself?
I'm just saying,
I'm kidding.
if you're bow hunting, anything can happen to anybody at any time, especially when you're hunting really big bucks and adverse weather conditions. I mean, when it's cold, it just compounds every problem or every potential problem.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's because cold weather is just, it helps with the hunting, helps the deer move, but it makes anything that could go wrong more likely to go wrong.
That's right. That's right. But that's why we love it, because you pray that it's going to go right more times than it doesn't. And look, I don't care who you are, you're going to have a bad scenario, and like you said, you try to learn from it and walk yourself through it. You're going to be sick, and that's all natural, and that's human nature, because we are human. But at the same time, just try to avoid that and learn from it. And what that also taught me was, before going into the hunt, while you can't predict every scenario, especially a spot and stalk, especially, when you're on foot, and obviously in a tree stand, you can look through gaps and scenarios of deer, but it's just pre-thinking some things ahead of time.
Exactly.
And that's helped me a bunch. Just anticipate, well, if this happens, if he moves here, or if he moves there, or if I've got to do this, again, if it knocks off 2 or 3 scenarios for me to help me be successful, then, I try to do that as much as I can.
For sure. I mean, trying to prepare yourself mentally for, like, especially when you're spot and stalking, what could happen here. You're analyzing the situation and you're kind of looking around at your surroundings. And you're like, if something gets messed up here, this is probably what's going to happen. So I got to be ready. And I mean, spot and stalk for pretty much. There's going to be more times it doesn't go right than it does.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and on a whole nother topic, we'll get into gear, but I while we're on the spot and stock, I think one of the lessons I learned was having gear, specifically sights, that will allow you to adjust in situations that change quickly. Meaning,
Yeah.
I was hunting in Nebraska and the Sandhills, big mule deer. I was shooting a particular site that it was an adjustable one pin.
Mm-hmm.
The deer was on me and I couldn't move. And, I had it adjusted for like 80, thinking where he was going to be. And he ended up at like 20 yards.
Yeah.
And such a variance. And I was frozen versus having a pin with multiple, or sight with multiple pins.
Yeah.
Would have allowed me to compensate enough to try to kill that animal. So,
Yeah.
Again, thinking about your gear to allow you to accommodate a variety of scenarios that can have big
Exactly.
changes too.
And that's always with the bow. I mean, that's always
Yeah.
the most challenging part is distance.
Yeah.
Judging distance. Obviously rangefinders are awesome, but you don't always get to use it. Most of the time we've experienced enough that we can pretty much guess pretty well 50 yards and under, but that all changes according to what kind of terrain you're in. When you're used to hunting in the South and you can look at trees and different things and gauge distance, when you get in the mountains and you get elevation and different terrain, I've seen stuff that looked like it was 100 yards to me and it was 40.
Yeah.
And it's just like, or vice versa. And
Yeah.
so, now for guys who hunt out there all the time, I'm sure it's less of a problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's, being able to, have gear that fits. And sometimes, you may even, if the difference between hunting whitetails, a lot of times I have two setups and two bows.
Yeah.
One set up for hunting whitetails and one for hunting other stuff that I may be taking longer shots.
I appreciate you sharing those. So if we take, all these things that we shared today, and I know we talked about a few extremes, and obviously, a few deer that were just, deer of a lifetime. But
Right.
for somebody that's, just hunting a mature deer,
Mm-hmm.
when you think about, an extended type of hunt, whether it's through the season, it's multiple days in a row, have to leave, possibly come back again. What are 2 or 3 things that you can just say, hey, make sure you keep these things in mind that will help you stay focused, not cut corners, and just stay diligent to, do everything you can to try to kill that mature deer?
Is that my phone?
Yeah.
What in the world?
It sounds like an alarm.
I never have my ringer on. I don't know how that happened. Do we need to redo that question?
Yep, that's all good.
Sorry.
All right. So, Spook, great stories, awesome deer, and thank you for sharing, a lot of information there. But if we were to say, okay, you know what, we're going to boil this down to, 2 or 3 tips for somebody that might be hunting, a deer over the season. They might be, hunting in an area that they don't know there's a particular deer, but it's just, again, it's that staying focused, diligent, ways to not cut corners and to do everything within your control to be able to get a shot at that particular deer or any mature deer that you're wanting to kill.
Yeah. I mean, you want to do everything you can to just stay positive, and just enjoy the fact that, appreciate the fact that you're getting to go hunting.
Yep.
And there's always things going on in the outdoors in Mother Nature, whether it's a hawk catching a squirrel or what, other deer that you're watching interaction. And then, I like to try to look at it as kind of just, I like challenges, accept it as a challenge, as a game,
Yep.
and every game's not going to be easy. Some games are going to be more difficult than others. And, just growing up in competition and athletics and stuff, I love the challenge. I love knowing that I was getting to go against a person who was supposed to be really good and preparing for that game and that particular particular matchup. And, just, when you're in the stand, or at home, resting or whatever it is at night before you go to sleep, thinking about what you can do to make it better. And then if you get tired and you get discouraged and you get kind of burnt out, take a break. And
Yeah.
that's why I think it's important to keep from getting burnt out or discouraged on those days when the moon's not right, the weather's not right, or whatever it is. Just take a break.
Yeah.
Spend time with the kids. Go on a date with your wife. Go hang out with your buddies. Just take a break.
Yeah.
And I think that those are some things that I think you should not put too much pressure on yourself, not overthink it, not try to realize that really in the big scheme of life, this is supposed to be fun.
Yep.
And
Look,
it's
that's good.
yeah. Yeah, so don't let it consume you to the point where you make yourself miserable, and I have been there. So, try to make it a fun time, a challenging time. Make jokes about the fact that this particular buck is kicking your butt, and and kind of just laugh about it.
Yeah.
Don't get yourself all worked up, because like I said, in the big scheme of life, it's something we're supposed to be enjoying. Most of us aren't hunting to survive.
Yep.
And if we are, we're shooting what we need to shoot to put meat in the freezer, and it's generally not too difficult. When
Yep.
we're after a specific, an older buck, we're in a trophy hunting mode. We got to realize, man, I'm just happy to be here.
But listen, man, God bless you for saying that. I know that I have a different mindset now at this stage in my life, and I put myself through some torturous days of pressure, especially when you got, a camera on you and you
Yeah,
got other
yeah,
people that are relying on you and they're out
yeah,
there suffering with you and you want to make it happen. But
yeah.
well said, man. We just got to be appreciative, enjoy it, and be reminded that this is an opportunity and a blessing to be outdoors. And
Absolutely.
look, it doesn't take anything away from the strategy and the competition and wanting to kill a mature deer at all.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I think you
But
just got to embellish it.
yeah.
Just, thankful for the opportunity, thankful that I even get to chase a deer like this, or even have an
Yep.
opportunity, or even to see a deer like that, and then, the people that you meet, just like you and I, but have become, very close friends through hunting. And,
Yep.
I'll be at SCI here, pretty soon. And by the time this airs, probably have already been to SCI, and I'll get to see guys that I met all of them through hunting over the last 40
Yeah.
years. And it's just staying, not letting it control you,
Yeah.
just be appreciative and happy and thankful, and thank God for just the opportunity and the blessing to be able to be out there and see all the crazy things that happen in the outdoors that a lot of people never get to see.
No, that's true. That's true. And then, when you're spending the time, like you said earlier, also don't forget to do the things that are in your control. Don't forget to take care of your body, take
Yeah.
care of yourself. Don't cut corners. Don't get lazy. Again,
Yeah.
I've been there, and, to prevent yourself from, when that opportunity presents, to, limit your opportunity. But well
Exactly.
said, my man.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate it. And yeah, just prepare yourself mentally and physically. I know I've gotten ready to go on hunts before, and I've had, maybe somebody was going to go with me, and especially, some mountain hunts, and they're like, what's what I need to do? I said, well, the first thing you need to do, you need to get physically and then mentally prepared, because very seldom do you ever go on a hunt of any kind, whether it's whitetail or big game or whatever it is, that everything is going to go perfect.
Yeah.
So you got to know in your mind that you've got to be able to see what's going on and react. And when something bad happens, not overreact.
Yep.
And, I think it's it's a lot like being a soldier. I think there's so many things that those guys have to prepare for mentally. And most of the things you're preparing for are things that could go wrong.
Yeah.
You're training for, and I know your brother Mark could probably speak on that better than any human being alive. But it's the same way with hunting. And I had a guy tell me one time, we were on a hunt, on a pretty physical hunt, a sheep hunt, and he said, "I'm going home tomorrow." I was like, "Dude, what? What's wrong? Something wrong?" He's like, "Man," he said, "I thought you was pulling my leg. I thought you was just trying to be funny when you told me I needed to get physically and mentally prepared." And he said, "I'm telling you right now, I'm not physically or mentally prepared for
Mm-hmm.
this."
Yeah.
And he went home from a pretty incredible hunt,
Yeah. That's unfortunate.
Yeah. And so it's just, but it's that way with everything. You get excited and you fantasize about your dreams coming true with a particular animal. And then when it doesn't happen quite the way you want it to, it's easy to get discouraged. But that's really when you have to have prepared yourself beforehand to the fact that, this is a smart, older animal living in his environment, and you're coming in trying to figure him out. And
Mm-hmm.
you're probably not going to be, well, not probably, you're not going to be successful every time. And you're probably not going to be successful right off the bat,
Yeah.
even though with today's technology and trail cameras and spotting scopes and, efficient equipment, efficient weapons, and a lot of planning and a lot of things that you learn, you are able to make it come together earlier than maybe sometime the way it used to be, where you didn't have as many things,
Yeah.
especially trail cameras. But yeah, it's just don't let yourself get so caught up in it that you make yourself miserable. Just enjoy the ride.
Well said. Well said. Well, let's end on that note.
All right.
And Spook, again, thank you for all the insights and the
Oh
knowledge.
man,
And
thank you.
please comment.
That's what we're here for.
That's it, buddy. That's it. So comment and look, ask some questions in the comments. And Spook and I are going to start, taking questions from you guys. And we'll have, a portion of the podcast where we'll ask Spook some questions and really dig in deep from your perspective. And then, just keep staying with us, like, follow, share these episodes. And the final thing that I just want to say, and Spook, you mentioned it too, and we are both very much lovers of this country. So, God bless this beautiful country. God bless our military, our
Oh man, for
police, our
sure.
first responders. Right now, there's some tough things going on around the world in this country, and we could not do what we do without those beautiful, amazing human beings.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, man, I think about people. I've been fortunate enough to do wounded warrior hunts before, and been around a lot of those guys, including at the top of the list, your brother, who is one of my favorite people in the world that served this country so amazingly. And I love, I hear hunting stories all the time, and they're awesome. But
Yep.
your brother's got some of the best stories in the history of
We'll
mankind.
get him on here and
Oh
see if he
man,
can
I
share a
just
few that
love
he
it.
can.
Yeah, I love it. And you know, I've had people ask me, "Were you in the military, or were different times?" And because a lot of times I had real short hair or whatever, and just my mentality and stuff. And I was like, "No, you know, I've thought about it, but I really think I was one of those guys that I think you would have been just like Mark. Also, me and you'd have been in there. I'm not sure I could have ever come out. Just like I think I would have loved it so much that
Yeah.
it would have been hard to ever stop.
Yeah.
Which so it was just, I don't know, there's something about that. There's certain mentality that when you have it, you're probably going to kill or be
It's
killed,
in
and
your
then
blood. It's
it's
in
in your
your
blood, and then you just do it
it's in his
until,
blood to this day.
yeah.
And there are many like him that are
Yeah, I can't
warriors,
wait to
like you
get him
said.
on here and make fun of him for his first turkey hunt. It was
Oh,
priceless.
listen, absolutely. There's a lot we can make fun of. We'll start talking about stories that he and I growing up on the
He's
ranch, and
not the kind of guy that you should look forward to making fun of. I'm so appreciative to have a friend like him that has done so much and been a part of so much to protect this country. Man, he was so intense. He's carrying that gun. I turned around and looked at him. You mean I thought we was fixing to go into a fight with a bunch of Iraqis, son. He was locked and loaded.
he's all yeah.
It was hilarious. I was like, Mark, I patted him on the shoulder. I was like, dude, just relax. It's going to be okay. I
It's gonna
promise
be
you.
okay.
None of them's going to pop their red heads up and start shooting back at us. So
What you didn't know, he had about 5 other guns hidden on his body that if
I
something
know,
went
right?
bad, that
A knife on each ankle and wrist and everything else. Yeah. Oh, it was
oh
priceless. It was
goodness.
priceless. Well, I know we're going to talk about this again, but when he shot that turkey, he was so excited, elated. It was priceless. It
Oh,
was
and
priceless.
I can't thank you enough. And I know we're getting a little off track here, but
Yeah.
this is important. If you remember, Spook, the general that came with us
Yeah. Oh,
was
yeah. Yeah.
General Harrell,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
General Harrell unfortunately passed away this
Oh,
past
man.
year, and he
Oh,
was one of my brother's dearest friends.
he
And,
was a
and at the
great guy.
time of
Yeah.
Black Hawk Down in Somalia,
Yeah.
he was a colonel. So Mark and Gary, went through many battles
Mm-hmm.
together, and unfortunately Gary passed away this past year. And he was one of the just amazing, you know, generals, leaders,
Yeah.
fighters, and
Yeah. Well,
operators. And my brother
that
had
time
the
period
pleasure.
when he and Mark and you and I were in camp together and just
Yeah,
listening
that
to
was the
those
hunt.
stories was one of the most special hunts of my life.
Yeah,
And it had
I
nothing to
appreciate that,
do.
brother.
It had nothing to do with hunting, other than that's what brought us together.
Yes, sir.
But just listening to their stories, good and bad, was just priceless. I mean,
Yep,
I actually look back on that. And I wished I could have had it all recorded. Probably some of the things we couldn't replay.
probably not.
but man, it was
Yeah.
so good, just to hear those stories, and I could just see myself there in those places with them. The stories were so awesome, and yeah, I hate to hear that. I think he would have been proud today of all
Yes, he
days.
would have. He would have been a very, very proud
Yeah,
patriot today.
yeah,
So, well, good. Well, brother, thank you again,
yeah.
and stay warm.
You
And
too.
we will be talking here real soon. Again,
Nope.
thank you
All right.
everybody
See you,
for
buddy.
sticking with us and following, and
Yeah,
please share and like. And we got a lot more to come.
can't wait. See you, man.